So are you filtering your emotions or demoralizing your team? We're going to unpack this and more on the Hanging with Hoopers podcast. Welcome back.
Welcome back, Andrew, Tim Hooper, your host.
Boom.
We're excited to be here for another episode. Attitude of leadership is everything, Tim.
Everything.
That's our slogan on the show. So I'm really excited to jump into this topic today.
Yes, put a filter on it, people.
Put a filter on it, right? No catfish away. No, not in that sense, but put a filter on it.
Yeah.
And the title can be a little disconcerting to some. We're not saying suppress your emotions here.
Correct.
We're talking about leadership. We're talking about filtering emotions so that your team can perform at its peak, optimal performance. Right. So I'm really excited to get into this one, Tim. Kick us off with this topic.
Absolutely. You know, somebody said that the best leaders out there are the ones who can ride the highs and lows with even keel. Okay. You don't want to capsize your boat, right? You could go up on a high wave. You could, flounder, right? In the dearth. So what we want to focus on today is staying even keel, getting on the recognition, the praise, but even in tough times, not taking corporate pressures, right? Boardroom pressures. We all know they exist. We've made difficult decisions, whatever the case may be, but coming and beating the team down or beating them up, if you will, to perform because all this pressure's happening at corporate. So we're therefore going to, just spew emotionally on, and a lot of times what happens, bro, and you pointed this out to me recently, is you said, what I've seen over my career is when that happens, when the emotions aren't filtered and it comes out, it's a new flavor every week. Mm-hmm. So what happens is, as a leader, our consistency and how we show up is broken down. So I'm gonna pass that over to you to we're gonna unpack this.
Right. What
filtering emotions looks like, maybe some missteps we've had, things we've said, things maybe we won't say, or have try to analyze in our own mind what not to say on a team meeting.
Sure.
What to say, how to approach certain things, but how to show up consistently. And there's some keys, some ingredients in how to show up consistently. So we'll unpack that.
Well, let's start with consistency. There's, kind of three things that all really in our minds, commingle's the wrong word, but they all work in parallel. Sure. They all work together to create an environment of consistent performance, not riding the roller coaster of emotions or the roller coaster of a market or the roller coaster of our what's going on in our personal lives as leaders to create a consistent experience for our team. So let's start with consistency, and then that consistency breeds into filtering, because we're going to operate on the third thing, which is our core beliefs. Right? What core beliefs do we hold as leaders that help us formulate every plan of attack that we have with our business unit? Sure. And any level of leadership here, this applies to you from C-suite down to branch managers, store managers, frontline managers. So with consistency, let's talk about that piece first. At a very basic level, I've always preached and believed and talked and advocated for the fact that your team should not wonder which version of Andrew or Tim is going to walk through the door every day.
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
You're going to be fairly consistent. I'm not saying to be stoic, unemotional human beings. I'm talking about not letting those things impact your tonality, not impact your energy towards your team or with your team. Because when you see those things impacting, that's one of the fastest ways to take a team that's performing and ruin it. And drive it to the ground, especially during bad times, right? So you talked about it to open the show. You said markets are down, the results may not be where they're at. And human nature, human tendency is to take the pressure being applied on us as leaders from above and turn around and regurgitate that pressure to our team. Drive. Make it all about the numbers, make it all about the bottom line. When that is the time to practice the most radical filtering and sticking to what your core beliefs are.
Because to show up consistent like you're talking about, I believe there are three ingredients. And they're all F words, okay? good F words, okay? You have to filter, number one. Just put a filter, and the dirtier the air, the tougher the times, Clean your filter more. You know your vacuum cleaner?
Yep.
Those little self-bagless vacuum cleaners, you got to rinse and wash that filter and dry it out and keep it going. If you neglect it, you're going to start getting air pollution in your house, bad smells in your house. You're not going to have a successful vacuum cleaner. Tim, you say, I have Eufy or I have the little Rombi or whatever you got.
iRobot?
Okay, you still got to clean a filter. You need to filter.
Mine has 1 day left available.
Get a thick filter as a leader. Number one, filter. Some of your people, they're just showing up to do their job. They want to do it well and they want to go home. And here's the other thing. They don't have to care about it as much as you or I care about it. We should not demand that of our people.
Right.
Is it inspiring when they do? Can they catch that fire from us? 100%, 1000%. But we should not demand that. We need a thick filter. Number one. Number two, you said it, guiding principles. Those are the fundamentals in our life. Those are fundamentals in our business. What actually makes the clock go around? For the consumer, what actually makes it work? Fundamentals, and then we'll end with focus.
Yep.
Because when the market's going on a roller coaster, or when your company's going on a roller coaster, leadership change, whatever, you will demoralize. And we talked about demoralizing your team or filtering your emotions. Which one are you doing? You will demoralize people if you're just constantly sticking your finger in there, which flavor is it going to be today? No, you may be going on a roller coaster, but as a leader at that local level, you can show up consistently and focus on what you actually can control.
So an extreme example of filtering that I'll share from my past. Bank world, back with a previous large bank that got slapped on the hand in a big way by the government for some not so great sales practices.
Yeah.
And there used to be, campaigns, right? Everyone needs a second checking account. Everyone needs a home equity. You're looking at it through a lens of a number.
Yeah.
We need to get to X amount of this volume of this number, and it completely forsakes what's actually happening on the front line. Because we all know that every customer does not need a home equity.
Getting
all
to know the customer truly.
So you have those branch managers that will turn around and just relay that to the team, right? Well, let's talk about filtering in that scenario, right? We know that if we're not going to sell something somebody doesn't need.
Right.
But if we have better quality conversation and ask the right questions, we can uncover more opportunities. So what's the basic behavior that if corporate's telling you we want X, or maybe you as a leader are telling your team you want X, and you can dial this back. What are the actual behaviors that if you go focus on radically with your team will always drive the top line? Because here's what I've always believed, and I don't know if this makes sense, so tell me if it doesn't, please. But I've always said...
Let me look at our producer.
For fundamentals, tell me if this doesn't make sense. But I think it makes sense to me, so maybe it'll make sense to you. As you're creating your core operating beliefs, your fundamentals, as a leader, I think you need to put some intentionality into that.
Correct.
These are things like, what comes first, people or money? What matters more to you? What do you think drives a longer term sustainable result? These are what we're talking about, fundamentals. So when you're creating those, I've always looked at what are the lowest common denominators. This is where I want your feedback, if this makes sense. So what are those common denominators that what I mean by that is if you look at every pillar of your business, growth,
Correct.
Operations, customer experience, team member experience, whatever your pillars are, if you look across those, if I focus on these 2 or 3 behaviors and activities with my team, is that the lowest common denominator that will impact all of those things in a positive way? Why? Because we only have so much effort and energy to put into coaching our teams on things. So, and we'll disengage them if we're constantly jumping from topic to topic. Correct. So if you're following that bouncing ball of the market and you're going thing to thing to thing, instead of understanding, if I have a core fundamental belief, and one of mine in banking as a leader was every single one of my bankers needs to be successful. If I come in every day and help my bankers to be successful, to perform, I know it will impact every aspect of my business, right? So my mission can solely be to filter out to when I get the directive from the top down that says, hey, Andrew, go sell all these home equity lines of credit. My directive to the team is not, hey guys, we need to sell all these home equity lines of credit. It's, hey, bankers, what types of questions are we asking our clients? We don't even have a HELOC conversation. We're talking about questions, conversations.
Yes.
Are we getting into a real conversation with a client? Or are we just keeping it on the surface? Like, let's ask some tough questions to uncover opportunities.
Yes.
So that's an example of filtering and then pivoting to your core fundamentals. Those things that will actually drive not only a bottom line, a top line or bottom line, but also will drive the customer experience and everything else in your organization.
Yeah.
Right. So that's an example I shared just because I think it applies to this conversation. So do I make sense with the common denominator thing or not?
It absolutely does. So there are core behaviors that will work across all product types, all business components, verticals, if you will, silos, although I don't like the word silo, business verticals.
Right.
They'll work across all aspects of your organization, some core beliefs, right? Customer experience first, like certain things that you're going to absolutely do. Better conversations. I love the word better conversation. You can have conversations, but how are you constantly bettering the conversation? So I love that you equate it to, we need to sell more HELOCs. What questions are we asking? Right? Because if you're uncovering in discussion, in regular conversational, form, and I love this from the sales side too, you're going to uncover other things they may need. It may be a HELOC, it may not.
Right.
So it's, again, by being more curious. Maybe that's one of your core guiding principles, curiosity. That's going to affect every vertical or every product offering.
Yeah.
Because you're curious. You're trying to get to know. And you said something else so key. Long-term, sustainable.
That's exactly where I wanted to go next.
Success.
Yep. Because if you think about this approach, focusing on fundamentals, relationships with people, versus let me manage you to reach a certain performance metric.
Correct.
We call it widgets, right? Let me go get this widget. If you manage to widgets, you will churn people.
Yeah.
You'll see a lot of turnover. I guarantee it. If you focus on relationships and behaviors and actually improving someone's skill set, it takes longer, but you'll see sustained results with and create a team with longevity. And so as a new leader, I do want to hit on this real quick with this because it can be, you can almost feel like you can't stick to your guns on this if corporate's coming down to you saying, go execute on XYZ, we need this, and you want to filter that to your team, and you believe that you need to focus on those fundamentals of relationships and behavior change and skill building, right? Some of those types of things.
Yep.
So my encouragement to a young leader today is stick to your guns on that. You don't have to flippantly tell leadership at corporate, I don't believe in that. No. You sit in the meeting, you hear it, you take it in, you understand the OKR, right? And you turn around to your team and you just lead it a different way. The caveat here is you do want to make sure that you adhere to your fundamental beliefs and practices with the discipline as a leader to go actually have those conversations, coach your team.
Right.
Because if you don't show a result, all that becomes is in business, that just becomes some sort of an excuse or lack of performance. So you're to effectively focus on these types of fundamentals as maybe a mid-level leader and filter to your team. You do need to show results. You have to prove that your way works if you're in an organization that doesn't necessarily lead like that.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. And
so be encouraged and stick to your guns, but make sure you're showing results through doing it the right way.
Yeah. And I think that at a very basic level, when you're sitting in those management conversations, to say, hey, have we thought about this?
Right.
How are others going to be communicating this out to your team? Asking those questions, especially if you're a younger leader, getting some introspection from other leaders sitting around that table, but then also going to your team and saying, hey, here's what we've been tasked with.
Right.
Here's the number. Here's the metric, right? A company has to grow and succeed with numbers. Now, I want to challenge us here as on the front line. What do we need to do? What behavior, what activity do we need to do in order to get close to hitting this?
You see, and I would challenge you on that a little bit, though. And just in my experiences, just on leading with even bringing a number into those initial conversations, right? I think if you have a very good, most organizations make their numbers decisions based on rational data, right? So it's going to be an achievable number normally. Sure. I worked for a company that had extremely unachievable numbers, and we still came close, and we did very well.
Right, and there's that style of management that say, hey, reach for the stars, you'll hit the moon, right? Or
some of that.
Right.
But here's why I don't like bringing it into the conversation, because when you bring it into the conversation, for the most part, your employees are simply just going to walk away and hear that. So instead, let's have conversations with each employee and actually look at what are they capable of doing.
Sure.
Build a performance plan for each of them around behaviors and activities that we know as leaders, if we execute and we support our team in executing, we will blow that number out of the water. Wow. Does that make sense?
So your filter's thicker. You're saying, Tim, put a filter on it. You're saying, Tim, my filter's thicker than yours. And
probably.
Again, maybe a management or leadership style.
This is my preference.
But I give credence to what you're saying. You're saying filter the number. Now, I believe strongly as a coach, as a goals-oriented person, and having numbers. I think there's what's the number? So what you're saying is have more of a number around conversations.
Don't bring corporate's number.
So you
create
put
a
your
number with that team member.
Bam. So what you're saying is
you credit together with them. It's not about what corporate's telling us to do right now. It's about what we think you can do as a performance for you.
So you're filtering the number into what is actually going to drive that result from that team standpoint.
Right.
So if it's how many conversations are we having,
correct.
It's not how many HELOCs did we
correct.
sell. So go
then from work backwards, right? So from those conversations, what was uncovered, did we act upon what was uncovered, et cetera, so on. So again, from a creating buy-in standpoint, if the team member comes up with the number with you as their leader, it's going to be a lot more. I had a great conversation with one of our sales reps about this recently, and she comes up with her own numbers. She puts bigger goals on herself than her organization would.
Wow.
But that's how she knows she thrives.
That's how she thrives.
And so when you do it in that way, you're allowing your team member to figure out, and you're helping them figure out how they thrive. And maybe you're going to have someone on the team that'll go crush and get 45 home equities.
Yeah.
And you might have someone on the team that will have great conversations and uncover 25 credit cards that they wouldn't have uncovered otherwise.
Yeah.
But they might only do 5 home equities.
Wow.
So it's important not to get so singularly focused on this one result we have and really customize your plans with each team member and come up with numbers with them.
Right.
And you know, as a leader, that what corporate wants, you just know how to get it from your team.
Yeah. Wow.
And not saying that in a weird way of like, you got to get it from your team.
Manipulation or
anything. You're doing it in a way that makes sense to each individual on the team.
You're filtering and you're actually building the morale.
Right.
Like our other podcast we talked about is building that morale. But you're filtering so that you're not just a conduit of pressure that creates a cooker and churns through people. I love that you said that. Now, you told me something earlier this morning as we were driving and just talking. You said something about having a couple simple guidelines where you are known for your 2 or 3 things that are super uber important. You've nailed down and people know consistently so we talked about filtering. I think we beat that enough. Talk about fundamentals. 2, 3 things. How did you come up with those as a leader?
So the one I already talked about was ensure that my bankers are successful.
Yep.
Because it's servant leadership, right? My goal is to help everyone on my team be successful, and if I help you be successful, I know I'll be successful.
How did you determine success with them?
We did an entire podcast on this. Actually, we talked about, was it People Before Profits, or we talked about helping people be successful first, right? And you'll get what you want out of that.
How did you determine success with your branch managers? Like, what was that conversation like? Was that one-on-one? Like when you say,
you mean
did you have an idea of what success meant as a branch manager from your years as a branch manager?
So
or did you sit down with
the success, right, for a banker would be helping them achieve their goals around income,
right?
Helping them achieve their goals around promotion, helping them achieve their goals around management, whatever it was.
Gotcha.
That's success. That's between me and them.
Yeah.
But I also have every branch manager and in most companies, there's going to be certain performance metrics you're going to have for your team.
Sure.
And so I knew what those were as well.
Gotcha.
So for me, if I'm helping them be successful, I'm helping the branch as a whole be successful to hit all those numbers. So that always played a role in that.
Got it.
Right. The other piece is operational. Operations will be a part of every day, like operational compliance will have a place in the organization every single day, knowing that when that one time a year comes, when you get a surprise audit and people rush in and they look at everything and all your books, it's all going to be in order because we practice it daily, right? So, and a few other things. But coming up with those, I think you need to be strategic and figure out what yours need to be. Because I think a lot of us operate, we have no idea like what those core fundamental beliefs we hold are, what we prioritize.
They're held in front of your eyes. You know where you're pointed, you know where, and people consistently get that version of you every single time.
Right. And so the lesson from that, it goes back to consistency. That's why I said they're all kind of interlooped here. They're on parallels together, because when you lead with your core guiding principles and you start every conversation with your team about, hey, branch manager, how are we helping our bankers be successful?
Yeah.
This banker clearly is struggling.
Yeah.
So what are we doing to help them? Where are we at? Right? In our business, it could be the companies we work with. What's the relationship like with this company? What's our next step?
Right.
Where are we at to help them be successful? right? Because that's what you and I do. We help companies.
What's the next conversation?
So what's the next conversation?
How are we having the next conversation?
So at the end of the day, that's a core guiding belief. Help the people that you lead or that you influence, help them be successful. Right. Help that relationship grow. So again, core guiding beliefs come back to consistency, and you can stick to those. And by sticking to those, you're then filtering all the wishy-washy that comes down from above. And again, that's why this creates it's like a life circle, right? It's not really a step-by-step on a destination journey. It's a circle of life.
Well, see, relationships are big. You do have that compliance piece in there. I think the empathy is there. I think recently we've seen the examples of, executives stepping out and taking pay cuts. Again, a form of filtering, I believe. I'm going to do this so my team doesn't have to. And you see that some of the PR and publicizing of that, the PR that goes along with it. I think it's good. It's goodwill. But even more so, there's plenty of leaders out there you're listening who's never publicized it, but you've taken some cuts, or maybe you're a business owner who had during a difficult time didn't take a salary. So we have those examples. That's a form of filtering too.
It is.
But I think that, again, was guided by our core belief of people before profits, or putting people first, or understand where your people are at.
I think it's the mentality of servant leadership of, I'm not going to ask my people to do something that I'm not willing to do.
So Simon Sinek, leaders eat last.
Leaders eat last, right? So you're in this case, leaders take the hard action first. So we've seen a lot of CEO of Google. There's a few others I sent you. I can't remember off the top of my head. Apple. A lot of these, they have had to lay off a lot of people during this economic downturn. But they've publicized the pay cuts the CEOs took, 30 million, 49, 50 million. Right. They didn't go to their teams and say, hey, we're laying people off, and then keep all these out.
Right.
They took pretty substantial cuts. Yes, is it a PR move? Absolutely. But is it the right thing to do? It absolutely is. And I believe some of these people did that knowing full well that it's a sincere, we need to do this to help our company.
And the layoffs still happen, but I still think that, again, the filtering is the filtering there, and not even filtering. The fundamental is, I'm with you. I'm one of you.
Right.
And I'm not asking you to do anything I'm not willing to do. So I
talked to a leader recently who said, instead of laying people off, I take a pay cut. Instead of laying people off, I take a pay cut, and I have enough set aside. I go out and create other sources of income through different businesses.
Wow.
Real conversation I had a couple months ago. Instead of laying my people off, they're all important to me. And I know that in our industry, it goes and comes. I take a pay cut and I go create income off of what I have from doing well in my life.
That's strong.
So think about leading from the front, leading by example.
Yeah.
And that is a way to filter. Even if you have to do a layoff, you're leading by example, and you're filtering a necessity to keep the company around to your team by saying, hey, here's how we're going to do it. I'm going to take the hit first.
So I know we again, are you filtering? Are you demoralizing your team? It all comes down. That's why I brought the pay cuts thing in. We talked about HELOC versus conversation. So again, showing up consistently. You're not doing a pay cut and flying, not taking your actions, and then all of a sudden you are, because now you have to.
Right.
It's, again, you're consistent as a leader, because number one, emotionally intelligent filtering. What does my team actually need to hear in this? There's a message to get across. What do they actually need to hear in this? What's actually going to motivate them, inspire them to action? So that number one, filter. Number two, foundational, fundamental principles guiding me at my core, at the business unit core, and getting super clear on 2 or 3 or 4 that help you show up. And then the last piece to this recipe of consistency as a leader is focus. Pointing the team. Choosing your focus, because guess what? What happens in the boardroom might be looking at different market segments and different other things that have nothing to do with my locale, my location right here. What is my team and my focus going to be? And like Stephen Covey says, draw the circle around yourself and go focus on everything in that circle. That's what you can control.
Yep.
How many of us get demoralized in our team by all of this stuff, all of the noise, and I'll call it corporate noise, and nothing against corporate. All the corporate noise is important, has to happen. Stockholders, shareholders, people are out there. They're demanding, the boardroom's happening, and there's different business units, and we have to make tough decisions. That's there. But I'm talking to you, individual leader, driving into your office right now to open your branch this morning. What does your team need to go focus on today to drive those conversations, to create raving fans, to have relationships prosper and grow. Yes, it's all going to relate back to a number, but what has to happen? Are you going to walk in there and cheer them up? Come on, let's go. How are we going to do this? And you're inspiring every day. You're showing up consistency. They're not going to walk in wondering, what version of Tim am I getting today? Is he going to be all sideways because he just got off a manager's meeting call? Or, right?
Oh, I mean, we can all relate.
Focus.
100%.
WTF, where is the focus?
Where's the focus?
So powerful, man. So choosing your focus. I love that you touched on servant leadership. And I know this one was just more of a dissection, unpacking. There's really no, I don't want to say there's some big exclamation point on this podcast today. I think this was, again,
I think this has been packed full of a lot of good principles, right?
Yes.
And you can take these things with a grain of salt and look if there's something that's inspired you to do some, change something. That's the whole purpose of this.
Right.
Just think through some of these things. These topics will help you thrive as a leader.
Yeah.
These types of things will help you thrive as a leader when you stick to it and you do it consistently. And you don't grow a thriving fruit tree overnight. It takes some time.
Yeah,
so be patient with some of these things. I know in sales industries that in anything that's related to sales, we can sometimes want to beat our teams up because of lack of a result.
Yeah.
But I promise you, if you don't use that as an excuse, you actually focus on the right conversations being had, and you focus on coaching, upskilling, putting the team first and helping them grow, you'll see the fruit from that. As you work through that process. So be patient, be consistent. This was a good one today.
And can I say one last thing?
Yes. No,
I usually do.
No, of course you can.
When I'm cleaning out the vacuum cleaner, right?
Filters.
If I do it inside, I'm going to make dust on the carpet. I'm going to string dust across to the sink. My trash can is going to have dust on the lid when I'm done. It's just a big mess. Okay. Sometimes cleaning, if you've been in a toxic situation and you just feel like, Tim, my filter's so dirty right now, take it outside. And what I mean by that is have a consultant, have somebody in your life that's sometimes outside of your industry, outside of your company, a good, trusted, patient, meek leader that you trust. It could be a spiritual leader. It could be a community leader. I don't care who it is, but go have a hard, tough conversation. Go choke it all out. Go take the filter out. They can handle it. They can give you some perspective on it and help you clean your filter out so you can come back into the house. That's your team. That's your company, and not blow your dust all over the place. It's very important that you don't go, because this will always come back and bite you if you're going to go clean your filter with other managers, or clean your filter in eat roast, like your top line manager, you're going to have roast manager with other managers. Don't do that stuff. Don't talk. Always respect, always paint your leadership in the best light across the organization and down the chain every time. Always back them up. Your filter goes both ways. Just sometimes need to take it outside. So just
I'm glad you ended on that. That's where we knew this was going to run a little longer on this podcast, just because there's a lot that play into it. I love that you say that, because in no point in this should you ever be bashing corporate to your team, or when you're filtering what the things we talked about today. You have corporate's back, and you also have your team's back, and you're the middleman to take in what they say, and you output a result.
Last time I checked, I know it's all automatic draft these days, but last time I checked, corporate's address is still on your paycheck.
That's right.
Don't ever take that for granted. Don't ever bash them. They're dealing with a lot of different scenarios that we'll never see on a local level.
Correct.
So always back your corporate.
I'm glad you ended with that.
Just
something to remember.
Filter it for the good of your team. And then also filter it both ways, because they're dealing with stuff you don't even see. Give them the same grace you would want if you were sitting in the boardroom. Boom. So I'll end with that. Hopefully you guys got something out of this. Let us know. Lean in, subscribe, share the podcast. Go rock, succeed as leaders out there, guys. It's all about attitude.
We'll see you next time.